Now let's take a look at UV unwrapping, specifically unfolding. Very irregular objects like this shoe are a little bit tricky to unfold correctly. And with the traditional cylindrical or spherical mapping or the automatic mapping, you don't really get very far here because the shoe doesn't look like a cylinder or a sphere and it's not a box. So we have to do UV unfold, and that can actually be a challenge in Maya, to be honest. However, there are a few things you have to consider to get good results. So I'm going to hide everything else, and let's take a look at the UV editor. Well, that is how it looks right now. Kind of useless. So what I'm going to do is I just delete the UVs and create a planer. So let's see. Well, orientation is okay. The scale is okay as well. But of course, the shoe is not flat like a billboard. It is three-dimensional. So what we have to do now, and that's a nice part about UV unwrapping, we have to kind of like think about it like a paper model or a packaging. We have to decide where we take a scissor and cut the mesh open and then unfold it. And to mark, for example, those cut lines, we can go into edit mode and, for example, make a loop cut and then make a loop. Sorry, not a loop cut, but select the loop. And maybe back here, I do the same as well. During the workshop, I was talking specifically the front and the back parts that you can trick there. So those are areas where we can play seams because our other geometry parts will hide the bad, texture seams we will see there. So it's not really a big issue in this case. And having this done, you can go to the UV editor, go to polygons, and then select the command cut UV edges. So this is, think about it like a scissor that's cutting through a piece of paper. Okay, so that is step one. Now let's take a look at step two. We go to unfold, and we can select this. So we have pin UVs turned off, and let's click apply and let's see what happens. And there. Now we have the sides of our shoe unwrapped, and you can, for example, clearly see where those edges were that we selected. So let's scale this window down a little bit. Let's go to here, and maybe let's take a look a little bit more what we're seeing there. Let's go into face mode. So where are those faces? They're down here. So this lower part is this side. Where do we have this? That's there. So this one is the other side. But then what is this thing here? Well, let's see. So you see that, interestingly, so the big part, that's actually the inside of our shoe. And this one here, and that is where Maya gets really annoying and frustrating. That is actually unfolded down there. So this small piece is the inside, and I have no idea why the left side is so large, the right side is so small, and also all those are unfolded kind of unevenly. But unfortunately, Maya is very, very powerful, but some of the tools, the way how they implemented them, are not really very user-friendly, to be quite honest. And if you go Google, YouTube, and Maya Unfold, you will find a barrage of professionals complaining about the bureaucracy of those tools. But then you can install free third-party tools that provide you much better uh, unwrapping tools than what Maya with the interface comes with. Or in case you can do Merle scripting, of course, and you can write it on your own. But for example, I can't. So what we have to do in the next step, well, this layout is actually a little bit useless. So what we have to do now is scale everything correctly. So maybe before I do this, I'm going to apply a shader so I can actually have a look at my object. And new material would like to be a Lambert, and then I'm going to click the checker box next to color and select checker. Let's turn this one on and high quality. So I can see how, for example, my checkerbox material is projected over my shoe, and you see everything is kind of very uneven. So what I need to do now is I need not only to scale the mesh and position them correctly inside the UV editor, but what you want to do is to try to prevent UV unwrapping distortions. So let me show you what that means. So I can close all this. Let's go to here. And let's go into face mode. And now I would like to select the UVs. So UV, there. Oh wait, you can't do it this way. We have to do it a different way. Hold on, where was it? Where was it? And select, there it is, select shell. That was the command. So you can click kind of like a UV vertex, and then in here you see where this point is, and then right mouse button, you can go to select and then select shell. I work in 3 different programs, so sometimes I get a little bit confused with the key commands or where tools are positioned, so sorry for that small hiccup I just had. And let's do the same, shell, and let's rotate this one, and this one is way too big, so let's scale this one down. Let's move it to here, and I try to scale them so they're a little bit the same, and maybe for easy comparison I scale it this way, there, because there you can see that it's way too big. Okay, so that is not too shady. What do we have up here? Those are some of the back faces, I assume. So that's of course going to be a task to select those. There. And select shell. Of course, that selects everything. Another annoying part of the UV editor in Maya. Oh well. Select shell, and then let's scale this one up. And I think at one point I started this, unfortunately. So let's scale this to here. Okay, and then I can select the other side and then go select shell, scale this one down. And please again, just keep in mind, all the steps I show here are just one way how you can do it. That's the beauty of Maya. There are many ways how you can use the tools in this program. Like you have access to the mesh modeling through the icons, through the menu, through the keyboards, so you can perfectly set up your own workflow. So currently I'm going to position this to here. Oh, actually, you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to stack them. Nope, wrong one. Let's go to there. And then this one. And select shell. Let's move this one temporarily up to there. That's inside. That, for example, is not really that important to me right now. So see, you can also go UV and then select shell. And here again, with the UV selected, select shell. Now my memory is coming back. I'm going to flip this. And I'm going to move this one up. And it's annoying. You see how, for example, the back parts are very different unwrapped. So again, Maya is sometimes usable, not always. In case something doesn't really work the way you want to, sometimes it can be Maya's fault. I'm not saying it's a bad program, but it has definitely certain shortcomings. Now, this stuff I would like to get down to there, and then I scale it up. Because this thing, for example, should now have a similar height as the back mesh, and maybe place this one to there. Now, I'm not going to do kind of like a texture painting like for a face, so that I can get away with stacking my meshes here, because each side is cut and will show one particular part of the texture image we will put later into the background. And on my shoe model, I have the left and the right side. Then we have, of course, this really bad seam, but then the other geometry parts will cover that seam. And that is the only reason why I'm kind of like stacking my meshes here, so I don't have to create a super large image. And also at the same time, I can reuse the same pattern for each side. I only have to design it once. Okay, so with this, for example, done, I basically UV unwrapped this shell in Maya. Now let me show you how you could UV unwrap this one in Blender. So I select my shoe, then I go to File, Export, Selection. Let's see what options we have. OBJ export, include. Yeah, that's okay. Export selection. Let's go to the desktop and let's call this one shoe body and export. Now, if you would like to get Blender, you could go to www.blender.org. During the time I was actually in graduate school, when people ask about a good UV unwrapping in Maya, at that time, that is now 7 years ago, people said use Blender, which is actually also free. It's a pretty good mid-range, entry-level 3D package. Doesn't have all the bells and whistles as Maya, but in certain ways it's very easy to use. And the UV unwrapping is much better. Actually, Maya tried to implement the same approach Blender has. Then you could click on download Blender, and then based on what operating system you have, you can download it. Now, let me go to Blender for a second. So this is the way how the interface will look like. Middle mouse button, you can rotate, and shift middle mouse button, you can pan, and then with the scroll wheel, you can zoom in and out. And let's go to File, Import, Wavefront. Let's go to Desktop, and then Shoe Body, and Import. So there's my shoe model. Left or right click, you can select it. Also, maybe that might be good to point out, when you install it for the first time, you want to go to User Preferences, Input, and then click Select With to left. So left mouse button is select objects, and the right mouse button is actually for the 3D cursor or the 3D widget. This thing I'm placing, that is the 3D cursor. And here you have a branch icon. If you click it, that's a modifier, and then you can select subdivision surface maybe. So the object will be rendered kind of like in a smooth preview like in Maya. And you see that the geometry was carried over one-to-one. That's a nice part about OBJ. Wavefront Alias designed it, and that's basically Maya's native polygon exchange format. And that one Blender uses as well. Now let's adjust the interface a little bit. You see if I move my mouse on those black lines, I can adjust the viewport. And there are triangular lines at the corner. If I click and drag to the right, you can see I can subdivide. If I click and then move back to the left, I can merge. So this way you can cut your interface into different view elements. So it works actually very similar to the way how Maya actually works. You have like an outliner which shows you all the different objects. And here for this viewport, I would like to load the UV image editor. Now, Blender also has something like Maya object mode and edit mode. You see right now I'm in object mode. I can move the object around. And down here, I would like to go to edit mode. Because in an edit mode, as you can see, I can select all the different faces. And Blender does not have a UV mode. Just if I simply select a face, then I see that face UV unwrapped. Not necessarily sure what the advantage of having the UV vertex selection mode is anymore. So now how to unwrap it. So if I press A to deselect everything and press A to select everything, you also have kind of like a selection menu down here. For example, deselect and select everything. And you see inside the UV editor my unwrapped mesh from Maya. Now if I press U, that is for unwrap, I can unwrap this one now. And of course, this looks completely wrong because it's unwrapped like a cylinder. So I have to do the same marking edges. So I press A, and then I press the Alt key and click on this loop, and then select this loop. And then again I press Alt and click on this line, and Alt and click on this edge. And you have to hold Shift because otherwise your previous selection will be erased. Shift, Alt, and click. Okay, so everything is selected. And then you can go to Mesh, Edges, and Mark Seam. That is basically similar to the cut UV edge in Maya. And then if I press A and press A to select everything, I can press T. You see T opens kind of like a toolbox menu on the right side. And if I then press U for unwrap, you will get a small heads up display. And UV mapping, you want to use UV unwrap, and bang. There it is. Actually, I forgot those two parts here in the back, so Alt click and Shift Alt click. Then again, go to Mesh, Edges, mark Seam A and A, press U and unwrap, and there's my shoe model. And if you take a look at what Blender is doing, you can clearly see that this is actually a much cleaner and better mesh than what Maya is doing. I can move my mouse on a mesh, left click for example can select a point, and if I press L to select linked and then press R for rotate, I can select everything, press G to move, L, R for rotate, G for move, L to select everything, R for rotate, G to move, L, R, and G, L and Shift L and R. And you also see size-wise, they all work. So to be quite honest, the unwrapper in Maya is embarrassing because you can see that as you see, I only did few steps to get a really good result, unlike what Maya forces me to do. Now I just have to see what are my two outside faces. Okay, so up here and up there, and then AA. So this and this are my faces outside, and this moving to there. Those are my shoe parts inside, I think. Yeah, and no. So, okay, let's L and G, move it away. L. You can also hear, because everything is cut with seams, if I select a face, I have my mouse on it, and then press L, you can see that it selects the mesh. And then A, and then move it down. Okay, so now I have everything positioned here correctly. A, L, G. I can press B, so I have kind of like a selection tool. And I'm going to put those together this way. B. In Blender, it's not spacebar, because spacebar opens the command line to type in commands like extrude or so. In Blender, you have to press Shift spacebar on a viewport, and then you increase it. And I'm running a little bit through the Blender interface, but if you watch it one or two times, then you will understand how it works. Because it's actually very similar to the way Maya works, and it's very easy. Okay, so I think this layout is really good. And then in Blender, I would like to export now this as an image for my texturing. So I could go to UV and then export UV layout. Could go to the desktop, all UVs modified for modified mesh. So this maybe I should explain. I'm using a subsurface modifier. And the unwrapping, when we clicked unwrap, I had this one turned on, because this means that it is using the smoothed mesh for unwrapping as a target. If I turn this one off, you can see how the geometry is a little bit different. So of course, this means if we then say export UV layout, you want this to be turned on. Then on the desktop, I could, for example, say shoe layout. 1000 by 1000 pixels, PNG, that is all okay. Click export. And of course, you would like to bring this shoe back into Maya. So this subdivision surface modifier I can leave. I could go to File, Export, and then Wavefront. But again, A selects no object in object mode, and then left click selects the object. I only want to export the shoe. Export Wavefront. And then here, if you have multiple objects, turn selection only on, and then deactivate apply modifier. Because if I do not turn this one off, then for example, I will get a denser mesh exported, but my original mesh is kind of like this. And this is kind of like a, I would say maybe similar to the smooth proxy tool or smooth mesh preview tool in Maya. And Blender uses so-called modifiers for a lot of tools, similar to 3D Max. So, okay, sorry for this. Let's go back to File, Export, Wavefront, Selection Only, no modifier. And let's maybe leave it at this. Let's go to Desktop, Shoe, and Export. Then let's go to Maya and see what happens when we bring this one back. Import and Desktop. Here's my shoe OBJ. And in case it doesn't show up, that could maybe be because inside the plugin manager, the OBJ import export is not turned on. And here it is, OBJ export bundle. So you want this one to be turned on. So File, Import, Desktop, Shoe Body, Import, and there's my shoe. See, it appears right at the same position. That's the really nice thing about it, and also the same scale. So let's move it to this layer so I can turn here everything off. And let's take a look at the UV editor. And as you see, perfect UVs in Maya, just by using a different program. Now in Maya you also have this UV export tool, and that is actually, where is it? Polygons, UV snapshot. There it is. So if I click on UV snapshot, you can click browse, I select the desktop, and then maybe here I say Maya. So I know it's a different file, save. And maybe also 1024 and 1024, keep aspect ratio. Okay, and if I click OK now, only this upper right corner quarter of this UV editor actually is being exported. Click OK. Okay, so that was basically how you do UV unwrapping in Maya or Blender, and how you can then in Blender as well as Maya export the UV textures. And in the next video, I share then how we can layer the different materials.